it was unusually high when a lot of these folks got in, and there's not enough to sustain all of them. And so the best are going to rise up, which is good and bad. So if you're not good, it's like, you better get good quick, but it's going to be almost impossible. If you've been coaching for less than 5 years and you're not like a total badass right now, it's going to be tough, or like unbelievably committed. So this probably will not be a side gig for you. What are the decisions in your life that may not have seemed like at the time, but have been a blessing for you? So we're creating a positive association into making decisions. And then we say the reason that most people don't succeed is because they're not decision makers. If you go to any company, and a lot of you are here in sales, you go to a company, you want to talk to the what maker? The decision maker. Anybody in business who can't make a decision is useless.
Today we have, I don't know if you've heard of him, but this guy, his name is Eli Wilde on the show. He is a world-renowned thought leader on persuasion, public speaking, and leadership. I am absolutely thrilled to dive deep on his story and discuss some of the principles that enable him to close $1 million in revenue from stage. So thank you so much, Eli, for being on the show.
Excited to be here. Can't wait to dig in.
Heck yeah. So first, you have a unique background and you used to be an actor, right?
Yeah.
So how did you actually transition from acting to selling to now becoming a thought leader?
Well, the very long story short is I dated a girl that was amazing, and she got me a job when I moved to LA in sales, selling dental products over the phone. And her and I weren't talking, but around that same time, I go to a party one night, and this guy and I connect, and he was clearly hitting on me. Gay guy. I'm not gay, but he's an awesome guy. So we just connected. And turns out he was best friends with Erica, my ex-girlfriend. The three of us became really good friends. And he was a manager, like for a pretty big, big agency. They managed Jim Carrey, some famous people. And he was managing Tom Welling, who was Superman on the show Smallville. And he said, look, they turned down my guy. We thought he was a shoo-in. I think you'd be great. So they trained me for 6 months for the role. And then as it got down to it, he says, you got a serious shot at this, but you need to quit your job, go all in. And I wasn't comfortable. And the fact is, I saw myself on camera. I didn't like things and how I articulated, how I didn't enunciate certain words. And so I just quit showing up for the classes. And then I got really focused on my sales job. I went all in on it and I made good money, but I was like super depressed. And I had this burning question, like, why didn't I go for it? And why do some people like go for it? Why do some people believe in themselves? Why are some people confident? And so that led me in this self-discovery, self-development world, hypnosis, NLP. And from there, I found Tony Robbins. And when I saw him on stage, there was other people speaking and selling where there was no money down real estate or Forex, or, Donald Trump spoke at this event. And I was there to learn sales stuff. But when Tony came on, he clearly had a talk that you could say was scripted, but it felt very in the moment, very authentic. And he had a style of communication that really enrolled me, didn't just sell me, enrolled me in a vision. And I became just fascinated with it. And when I went into speaking, I already had a background in seeing how I was on camera, connecting with the emotion, not just with the words. And I was good at memorizing scripts. So the transition from having somewhat of an acting background and an understanding of emotion of myself and others, and then into performance, really just kind of segued. And then understanding with speaking and selling, there's a lot of similar techniques, understanding emotion, connecting, performance, engagement, charisma. And so that was the transition.
I see. Okay. That's really cool. I actually have a background in acting as well. I used to be, that's what I studied in school. And then I was doing off-Broadway theater, and then I taught acting, and then COVID happened and then I stopped. And so I see how there's definitely a parallel from, being someone who enjoys commanding a room, and seeing that translate into sales. The thing that I'm really curious about your experience with that are there any major lessons that you brought over from acting into sales or leadership, persuasion, all that?
Great question. I love that. And, I think, and this from performing, well, one, as an actor, you're auditioning all the time. like, I lived in Los Angeles for a long time, and the majority of the Screen Actors Guild are broke or looking for a job. Like 80-90% of the time, everybody's looking for a job. So just like as a salesperson, you're ultimately getting a lot of rejection. How you deal with that, how you prepare for the next audition or role, you need to be prepared, know what you're talking about. And even if you're the best actor in the world, you deal with a lot of rejection, same in sales. So I think the mental component of it, being prepared, and just like if you were preparing for, a play or a commercial or, a movie, you have to get into the emotion. It's like, what does this character want? What's their desire? What's the conflict within this scene? Because that's what makes it interesting. And just like in a phone conversation, what does this character, my prospect, really want? What's the conflict here? And so just this understanding of using some of those models to understand emotion, understand people, huge. The aspect of being confident in your communication, being articulate. And it's amazing, I miss LA in some ways because I had so many actor friends and people lived in that world. And, I lived in New York a few times, and the way that people dress, they take care of themselves. There's an articulation, there's an artistry to how actors and thespians move. And there's a performance aspect to it. Take that over into the business world. I think that successful people do have a certain charisma, or there's a certain care to their appearance, or a care for how they communicate. And that can be really interesting to listen to, where when you hear somebody in business that's been trained in how they communicate, it makes people listen, makes people lean in. And because there's care for how they communicate, because maybe they've watched themselves on film, they've listened, they're more conscious communicators. I think that makes people more interesting to listen to, not just on the stage or in acting, but also in sales. It makes people want to lean in and actually listen to you when you have that. So really just understanding emotion as a whole and having care for our communication, I think is huge.
I love that. And this actually reminds me of something that just last night I was coaching some of my clients on, which is just being able to let go on the sales call and be themselves, because that's how they can actually come off more natural and more engaging. So what's that fine line between studying the craft of it, learning the principles, techniques, but then also being yourself?
I think it takes reps, reps in, well, one, I think a lot of people that get into acting, including myself, like I had a really troubled childhood and I didn't like myself very much. And I remember watching movies and TV shows and seeing amazing characters. And I thought, that sounds cool. And I had this thought, like, what would it be like to be that person? And I didn't want to commit to anything. So I was like, what if I could be all these different people? Like, how cool would it be to just play and, act as someone else, to live as someone else? I was so curious about people and how we become who we become. And I thought, what would it be like to go through life as a 400-pound Black woman or a gay guy from the Bronx? It's like, how would that be like if I had that personality? So just, I think a deep understanding, just a deep curiosity for humans can make you more empathetic, which translates into all just life, not just sales or business. I think that's key. Your question again was, I kind of got lost. What was it again?
How do you toe that line between
Yeah.
studying the craft of being engaging, but also letting go and being yourself?
I think you have to try some things on, is where I was going with this.
Mhm.
And something aligns, because I think at the foundation, you have to, they say, know thyself, then be thyself. Most people they're not being themselves because they don't know themselves, but through trying on enough things and talking to enough people, you pick up things. And especially as a young person, I think that absorbs into who you are. So that's the first step, is to know who you are, and then run some plays, expand who you are. And as you're taking on, all of this, I think you can lose yourself sometimes, and that's a good thing and it's a bad thing. I think we're always in process, but to come back to your question, this whole concept of like being authentic is the essence of it. And I think that's important. And with sales or business or anything, that, this whole concept of be 100% certain. And there's times and place for that, like, especially in a sales call, you want to exude certainty, but being authentic sometimes just in your life with like, I don't know everything. Or even in a sales call, instead of just being certain and making something up, I'll have way more respect for a person selling me when I ask them a tough question about the product or the service or about this happens. And they say, I don't know. I've never been asked that. That's a great question. I really want to make sure I serve you. And so the authenticity of even being authentically yourself or authentically not knowing yourself or knowing the answer to something is another layer. So there's a gray area with everything as it relates to humans and communication, even in something as basic as being ourselves, because we're always evolving. So I think, and how we evolve is kind of stepping out of who we are. So I think it's a fine line there.
Yeah, I love the way you articulated that. Being able to just play around, like almost like trying on different hats.
Yeah.
Because that's actually what I did to figure out what my leadership looks like. And I never knew how to articulate that whenever people like ask me how I found myself essentially in this way when it comes to leadership. And what I did was I stood in front of the mirror and I just pretended to be Layla Hormozi because that's who I looked up to. And so I found, okay, well, I can't be 100% her. So let me find the middle on the pendulum, So just trying on different hats. I like that. I like it a lot. Good.
Yeah. She's badass. It's totally badass.
She is. And she was the closest thing to a strong, powerful, successful woman in something related to sales that I could look up to when I was coming up. So that was the hat I tried on. Okay. So when it comes to communication, right? Something that I noticed that you leverage is internal framing. Like when you're on stage selling, for example, I watched the training that you did on that. You talked about framing them internally so that way they were in a position to invest in themselves, right? When you did your pitch. So what's an example of how people, whether coaches, closers, can leverage that principle of internal framing on a one-to-one sales call?
Well, there's one of the ways. So a lot of this is based on NLP. And, you can get people it's almost like this, I guess you'd call it it's like a parts integration separation. And we can frame people based on like buckets of identity. Hey, you could be the type of person who this or that. So, and making one of those the obvious choice. So that's it. That changes a lot of it. But even to go deeper and make sure that you have some empathy involved. I've said something like this 1,000 times. Well, it sounds like there's a part of you that this, but there's also another part of you that. And what you need to ask yourself is, so I'm framing them internally where they even are asking themselves these tough questions.
Yes.
And I know that you're the type of person. And listen, I know that you've gone through a lot. You do have a lot on your plate. There's the holidays coming up. You've had all these things happen, but yet you still hopped on this call, which tells me the kind of person that never gives up. Let me ask you, before they can even interject, let me ask you, have you always been that way? Or is that the way that you've developed over time? So before they can even so I subtly label them, you're the type of person who never gives up. Have you always been that way? Or is that something you developed over time? So now there's a binary option where either one, they're agreeing to be that type of person. So it's like a double label. And then they tell me a story. It's like, okay, when was the first time? Or you just said, fuck it, like I'm going to do it. And then I can take them to a specific moment, which will have even more emotion. And so these are things that I might do early on, or I could even, be the comparison. I mean, there's so many people out there that just talk a big game. When it comes time to actually do something, they just keep on talking. And I'm not saying those people are like terrible people, but you and I know they'll never be successful. Anyway, so there's that in that too. So it's subtle. It's not like I have a script for it, but I'll see these openings where I can go and I'll start to be able to frame. But it sounds like there's a part of you that might be a little bit scared, like maybe there's a little bit of nerves. Is that right? Well, that means, and what I believe is there's probably another part of you, you call it your highest self, that ultimately wants more for yourself and your family and isn't going to quit. And I think it's that part that got you to that call. And I think it's that part which is ultimately going to lead you to feedback their big goal. And so that version of you was to have a conversation with, and I don't want to say your lower self, but maybe the part of you that gets scared sometimes. What would the higher version of you say? And so also something I say where I can be a little bit abrasive, you could say, in my language. I might say something like, I'm not going to say, or I'm not saying, but I am saying it. So I'm not going to be, today's November 5th, so it's kind of political, but I used to say this all the time on stage talking about communication styles, and it's all a mess everywhere. Like the people that we have to choose from are a mess. But I said many times, like, I'm not saying Joe Biden has dementia. I'm not saying that he's unfit to run the country. However, so when I say something like that, I am clearly saying it. Like the words are coming out of my mouth. Like I'm not saying so-and-so's a bad person. I would never say that. But I just said it. So I'm not saying there's a part of you that's scared or that wants to give up, but there might be a part of you that just hasn't been developed yet. So I'm not saying it, and I let it land. And you see people, they don't want that to be true, but they know that it's true. And I'm not saying it, but I'm saying it. So it's there. And part of them has to deal with that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the whole, I'm not saying that's going to be you, but then you're just planting, that's going to be you. Would
Yeah.
you use
I'm
that?
not saying that if you don't take this program, you're going to be a complete failure. Everybody's going to laugh at you and the whole rest of your life is going to absolutely suck. I would never say that. Like, I'm not saying that if you don't actually step up and take action, that you're like some big wuss bag and no woman's ever going to sleep with you. No man's ever going to want to be with, whatever it is. I'm not saying like by you not saying yes to yourself, you are so out of integrity. So you could really expand on it. And that's one of the amazing things about speaking on stage versus sales, the context there, one-on-one, I have to get them to say it because if I say something, they doubt it. If they say it, it's true. So it's about how do I get them to say it, to believe it, to emotionalize it. But on stage, I can get away with a lot more, but I have to do it in a way that's non-confrontational. We call it attack and confess, where I'll attack myself or I'll attack somebody else, not my audience. But I get to be very direct with an understanding of frames where they still feel the emotions that I want through quotes, embedded commands, but it's unconscious, so they're not conscious of it.
Okay. I'm curious, is this a way of using storytelling as a tool in selling, or is storytelling a completely different kind of tool?
I do stories all the time. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, one of the concepts I used to talk about a lot, quid pro quo, which means give a little to get a little. And I remember years ago, I was on a sales call. I was coaching a company and they're having a lot of struggle in sales with their leads. And I said, well, I'll take some calls. And it was like for writing a book or something like that in 90 days. And the call was going nowhere. I kept on asking this woman like deeper, probing, like emotional questions, going nowhere. And so I couldn't get her emotional at all. And so I said, can I share something with you personally about myself? Nobody's ever going to say no to that. And I told a vulnerable, emotional story about myself. I tied it back to the product that would a book that changed my life. And then from there, I asked her, can you think of books that changed your life like that? She said a book. I said, what did that book do for you? How did it shift things for you? We went deeper. I said, well, really what this call is about, how you get to be that person. Think of yourself not now, but the person you were 20, 30 years ago. Did you ever feel scared or lost? What did that version of you need to hear? Well, that's the book that we need to write.
Wow.
Because there's people out there that follow, of course, Tony Robbins or this person, but I believe in what has inspired me, and maybe this inspires you, that there's people out there that aren't going to buy from there. There's people out there that only you can touch. I don't know if you believe in God or whatever, but a higher power. But I believe we all have an assignment here on this Earth School to learn some things, but then we have a responsibility to give back. And do you think so? Then it was like deeper. So I tell this story, and then in all my stories, whether it's on stage or even in a mini story like this, there's what I call a bounce, where I pull people into the emotional, deep parts of my story. So I could talk about how somebody said something to me that made me feel like I wasn't enough and made me feel absolute shame for who I was. And I don't know if anybody's ever said something like that to you and told you that you couldn't do the things that you felt like you were meant to, but there I was. So that's a bounce. So pulled you into my thing. I told a thing and then I pulled you into it. And I don't know if anybody's ever told you that you couldn't. And then I go back into my story. So there's key moments, pivotal moments where I'm getting vulnerable and I can see that the audience is connecting with me. I'll pull them into that part of my story, and I'll bounce it out and I'll pull them back in. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes. So it's cool. Like when I was watching your training on how to leverage this tool on stage, I'm always thinking, how can I do this on a one-to-one sales call? And so
Yeah.
you just demonstrated perfectly how you can do that. Getting the person engaged, especially with that bounce, having them think of a time when XYZ. I love that.
Mhm.
I'm curious, when did you know that you were destined to make a big impact?
Like I said, I went to Tony's thing because I was just lost, Tony Robbins, by the way.
Yeah.
And I just saw what he did. And it was like Donald Trump and Robert Kiyosaki, Susie Orman, and all these people on stage. And Tony just it was magical on how he came out. He was larger than life, and he just shifted. And he was supposed to speak for 2 hours. He spoke for 4.5. And I saw somebody just like, it was the energy and the sense of like somebody truly no bullshit, like living with purpose. And I was like, whatever that is, I want some of that. Of course, like with Hormozi's book, $100 million offers, and there's so much talk about the offer today, and it's super important. But when Tony sold me, I didn't know what the offer was. A couple years ago, I signed up for a $55,000 mastermind with Myron Golden, and I met Myron. I had taught inside of his class. I thought he was okay, but when I saw Myron speak, I was just like, whatever that is, I want it. So it was purely emotional, and there's an essence and there's an energy. And Tony, or Myron even talks about this. There's tactics, there's strategies, there's principles, and then there's essence and energy. And I think after a time, and really just what makes the world go around, there's an energy, like your vibe attracts your tribe, whatever you want to call it, like something aligns with us energetically and it makes a shift. And for me, the energy that was in Tony, it just opened me up like big time, and it shifted something in me. And I was like, whatever that is, I want to embody that. I want to learn that. I want to share that. And I didn't know what it was. And just like a lot of people hop into an offer, it's not because of the 86,000 hours of coaching or modules or coaching calls. It's this energy, and the energy is based in certainty. It's based in trust. It's based in connection. It's based in these aligned incentives and desires, and being seen and heard, and feeling supported. So it's an emotional thing, emotion, energy, and motion. There was a certain energy that became present for me. And like even how I sold Tony, because people would ask me all the time, like, how was I so much better than everybody else? Of course, I wanted to be the number one salesperson. Of course, I wanted to make money. But really, the belief and the certainty in my selling came from my sense of mission and purpose, where I felt lost, I had an experience, and I felt better. And I sold from a place of like wanting to change the world, and a belief that I could change the world if I exposed people to the strategies that were in that room that I believe lived only inside of that man. And so I sold from a place of like, I want to make the world better. I'm on a mission. I'm going to make your world, like the world, better. And I sold with the belief that your life will become better if you get in that room. So it wasn't that I wanted to be number one, wasn't me I want to make, of course I wanted those things, but what drove me was that. And I think when that's real and that's honest for you, there's an authenticity in that people align with, because it's not fake. And I really wanted to make the world, I wanted people's lives to be better. And I saw my audiences, especially when they were struggling, I was like, that was me. And they said they didn't have money. I was like, that was me too. They were like, they don't have, I was like, that was me too. They're like, I can't, they're like, yes, that's awesome. So it was a positive reframe. And I was just like, there was no excuse that people could throw at me, because anything that they would say was just so quickly absorbed by my frame. And being absorbed by a frame in the presence of a really confident person who's living it, it gets rid of a lot of objections. The example, to make it like a very like distinct example, I guess you could say, it's like if you don't want to work out, and you're going like you're going to go to the gym, but you don't feel like working out, and so you're about to like walk home and not go to the gym, and then you walk by like a guy who's in a wheelchair, or like, and he's going to the gym. He's like, hey, you going back to the gym today? And you're like, I don't feel like it, or, somebody with literally like all the reasons to give up, and they don't. And it just like, it just shines the light of awareness on your lack of consciousness, that you're just being like, not a bad person, but just not living up to your potential. There's like there's like a cost to your soul, you know, which is like the ultimate cost, like more than a financial or this or that. It just is right in your face that you're leaving so much potential on the table. And then when somebody can see through that, there's no bullshit, and they can hold you to a higher standard for your reasons, not for theirs. I think that that frame, that it's like an enrollment energy that people will feel really safe and seen in, and makes them want to expand for their reasons.
It's cool when you finally know what your purpose is. That's it's a shift that when it happened for me, it opened up everything. It gave me a reason to live, and that is why I'm here today talking to you.
Mhm.
And one thing that I really want to talk about is also what's going on in the coaching space, because I want to make sure that coaches, consultants, closers, everyone involved is able to stay ahead of the curve so that everyone can make money and be happy and make a difference and make an impact, right? So
Amazing.
what is the biggest shift that you're noticing in the coaching space, and how can coaches get ahead of it?
You know, it's interesting. So I remember Tony talking about this years ago, that he kind of created a monster because he created the coaching industry. There was no such thing as a coach till he came up with it. And you know, when he did that thing with Dean Graziosi, Tony and I sat down, we were going to create a sales program. This is April 2019. He did a UPW in London. I spoke at it. I did a day of it, and we were going to create a sales course together. And he had just started that thing with Dean Graziosi and the KBB Knowledge Business Blueprint. And we were talking about it, and he was even saying, yeah, I've kind of created a monster with all these coaches, coaching coaches to be coaches. A lot of them are not qualified. Like, you think about it, and Tony and Dean came out with a program a couple years ago, and I bought it. It was like $1,000, and I went through part of it. It was good. It was some basic stuff. Cole Gordon had some stuff in there. Alex Ramosi had some stuff in there. I was like, I'll see what this is and see how they market it. It was like 1 million people showed up for the challenge, and they sold 80,000 people into this $1,000 program. So you do the math, that's $80 million. And then fast forward like 12 weeks, they did a 3-day event, and they upsell people to a 5-figure program. So you think about it, that's 80,000 new coaches. And if each coach brought on, say, 10 or 20 or maybe 100 clients a year, that's like, there's not that many people interested in coaching. You know what I mean? It's like they say everybody, and there's been this big, thing out there, like all coaches need a coach. I think there's some truth to that. I think some people are being overcoached because the ratio is like, it's like 1 part learning, 10 parts action. And a lot of people are just, they're watching the 3 YouTube, and then they join a coaching course and they're on the calls. It's impossible to execute. Like, you need a lot of time, and you need a support system and all of that. So I think we've seen, much like the housing market went crazy a couple of years ago, and then, and now with rates and all that, there's just not that many people buying houses. Like, it was unusually high when a lot of these folks got in, and there's not enough to sustain all of them. And so the best are going to rise up, which is good and bad. So if you're not good, it's like, you better get good quick, but it's going to be almost impossible. You're going to have to work 10 times harder just to stay where you were. And that's a good thing, because you'll get better working. And if you're somebody who's already good, the people are just going to come to you anyway. I remember, when I'm good friends with Cole Gordon, and he was, we were talking about all the people coming into the coaching space with sales, like sales trainers. And he said that he wasn't, he said they're all going to pretty much end up with him for the recruitment thing. He said they're all going to end up there anyway. But it's just more awareness now. So we see it the same way. But the fact is, with so many new coaches, if you've been coaching for less than 5 years and you're not like a total badass right now, it's going to be tough, or like unbelievably committed. So this probably will not be a side gig for you. I mean, like, you're all in, awesome. Or if you're extremely talented, awesome. But, this whole like movement of all these people coming into coaching, and COVID, everybody was home. It's just, there's just not enough people doing it. But at the same time, population's increasing. The need for coaches in other countries is expanding, but there's less money right now with the economy too. And so, I mean, just there's less money coming in every month. And I know people in the top, 1% of this industry their numbers have shrunk too. Profit margins are down. So yeah, it's tougher to get leads and all of that. So for people that are struggling right now, it's really going to be like, do you really want this?
Yeah.
And really wanting it is like, for me, when I started working for Tony, I was so moved. I would have worked for him for free. And I was willing to. And I was so hungry. I couldn't believe they paid me for it. And I got paid on performance. So every day was like a miracle. And I even took the meetings that I knew would mean no money to me because I wanted to get better. And I knew I was going to be doing this for the rest of my life. So just like going to a university where you pay for 4 years and then you get paid, I was willing to I would have paid for the mentorship with Tony because people do, but I was working like right with him. So I think it's like, if people want to stick to it for the next couple of years, like it will turn around, but they got to work harder now than ever. And it's going to weed a lot of people out is the truth.
Do you think that people who are unbelievably committed and who want to grow their coaching business, do you think that they should get into speaking gigs, just doing a lot more of that?
Yep. I think speaking in general, one, just like with coaching or sales, whatever, the barrier to entry is so low. It's like, I mean, anybody can do it. Anybody can post online, say they're a coach. It was like, just like joining a network marketing company, and they take anybody. But with that, the cream of the crop rise. And so with speaking, with AI, almost anybody can put together an amazing presentation now. I can use AI tools to create a great script, take a picture of me, have an AI that looks just like me, do the presentation online in 18 different languages, all in the next hour. And it's like a perfect presentation. I can even tell it, hey, make it more this, or make it more that, or make my stories more emotional, make me sound more like Tony Robbins or Oprah or Obama or whatever. And it will do it. And it'll be words coming out of my mouth. And so with that said, in the online space, because of that, and because of AI, it's a great tool. I love it. I think it's going to make people even less trusting, where they're going to say, hey, that was a perfect presentation you did, but I can clearly see that wasn't you, or it is, I don't know if it's you. I don't know if this person's real. And so the big ticket products will be sold at in-person events. When I met Hermosi, I wanted to go up to him and meet him. He came up to me, he's like, hey, I want to meet you. He's like, I've heard of you. I know who you are. You're like, can we hop on a call? I want to pitch you an idea. I was like, yeah. So we hopped on a few calls, and he told me back then they were getting like 3,400 applications for acquisition.com a month, all unqualified. And so he had doing this idea, and part of his branding, his image was, I've done $1 bajillion and I have nothing to sell you. He quit saying that because it was going to change. And he consulted me because he was going to do take all those people that applied every month, have them come to a 1 or 2 day event, and then sell them into a consultancy package for like 100 to 400 grand with like a fractional CFO. We talked about it. And I said, I didn't think I could help him because he had just a rabid fan base. And I said, look, dude, you could sell anything with the worst presentation, people will buy. But he said that he was going all in on events where you get your content done. That's where you get to dig in. That's where you get to find clients. They get to see if you're real. You have this great relationship based on how they see you from the front of the room, where you're at scale doing the thing that you're an expert in. I think that is the go-to way for your business, this speaking thing, because of this trust recession that we're in, which is real. Anybody can have a perfect script or presentation or video or editing, hijack our dopamine with edits and all this stuff going on. But when they spend time with you for a day or 2 days or 3 days in a room, you get to see, is this person real? Can they actually communicate? Are they an expert? Do I like them as a person because I've spent this time with them? And then they're going to buy. So I think we need the AI because of the speed to get it out there. But when people make big decisions, they're going to want to have an experience of you over time. And it needs to be like not polished YouTube edited videos time. It needs to be significant time demonstrating your expertise in a language of relationship and communication and similar values. And I think that's why events are going to explode for the top 5% of people in the industry.
That is super solid. So anyone who's unbelievably committed to growing their business, despite the economy, despite whatever's going to happen with the election, despite all the fear and the lack of trust and all of that, just do live events, which for a lot of coaches is scary. So what I want to do next actually perfect segue is I would like to see you objection handle me. Okay.
Okay.
Let's see your chops. Let's see how you do it. I'd be interested to see how different or not different it is from how I teach it. So let's say you're closing me into a speaking program. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm scared. So let's do that. Here we go.
So one, so here's the thing. I handle a lot of this at the beginning of the call. So
Okay.
I have, it's like, and it's interesting too, because we have videos of me and Eli closing people, and it's like 80% of the time it's an objectionless close. And the 20% of the time there's an objection, it's usually ours. Like I say, I don't think this is right for you.
Oh,
But it's like, and this is for everybody on a sales call. Because I don't know why some people do this, but when somebody gets on a call with me, like I always know how much money they make a month. I always know like where they're at. And so there's never like it's just like a conversation. And they've already told me that this is the right thing and now is the right time at least twice on the call.
okay.
And so these last minute nerves, what it could sound like is, say they brought up this pattern thing a few times, or this fear. So I'll label it a pattern. So here's an example. We go back and forth, but I want you to even just get an experience of what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
It sounds like
Play it.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It sounds like you've kind of got this pattern of maybe call it some concern or maybe even a little bit of nerves. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, like speaking is something I do want to get into, but it's just like I'm afraid the worst case is going to happen is I embarrass myself in front of people, I flop, and I ruin my reputation.
I think every amazing leader that you inspired by you or inspires you now once had that same thought. They just didn't let it stop them because listen, and here's the truth, that pattern, that thought is always going to be there. And while there's patterns that make people very successful, there's patterns that come up that cause people to fail and really struggle. I'm starting to hear some of those patterns in you, and I want to help you break them right now, if you'll let me. Because ultimately, I can't do this for you. You need to make a decision here. Do you want to be somebody that really makes an impact in the world? Yes or no?
Yes, but I'm just afraid that if I ruin my reputation, then I won't be able to make that impact. Or if people see me stutter or sweat or faint, or like people won't take me seriously.
Well, and that's the amazing thing about being a speaker, because ultimately, and there's two ways that we can live our life. One is outside in. We're afraid of what other people think. Or two is from inside out. And inside of you, there's a desire to be a speaker that you want to put out into the world. Like there's something inside of you want to put out there. But basically, it comes down to living at cause or living at the effect. And if you're scared of what people think of you, you're scared of being embarrassed by what other people think, well, then you shouldn't be on stage. You shouldn't be a speaker. But if you can get yourself to overcome that and really step into the most powerful version of yourself, that's when you can lead. So ultimately, before you can lead the room, you need to be able to lead yourself. So I'm asking you again, is this something you actually want?
Yes.
Okay. So from there, so it's typically like in that process, by then I've had people say like they're really aligned with it. And for us, when people come to us, like this whole idea of being a speaker, so they're scared of the investment or they're scared, of being embarrassed. I think, and for our target market, it's just like somebody saying they're scared to sell. That doesn't come up much for me, like this scared of what people think or whatever, because our whole target market is entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And they're already doing videos, they're doing VSLs, they're already doing the thing. And part of the things that I say, so we've had to, as we're going more broad, because when we started, we only had one program for speaking stuff. It was 50K. And then we did like a 10K group thing. And now we've got like a 2K thing. So just like what's happened with coaches, which I struggle with, like the way that Tony Robbins and all these, people sell people on coaching, not poo-pooing on Tony or Dean or any of that. They need to sell people on the fact that they have value. Hey, look, you're ahead of other people. Like there's people out there that will pay you for your advice. And so you need to believe that you have value. So half of the events are getting them to install a belief that you have now knowledge and expertise and experience that other people will pay you for. People come to me. If they're going to talk to me, I'm going to push those people away. I ultimately say, hey, if you're doubting yourself as a coach, you probably shouldn't be one. Like by the time you get to me, you know you're an expert. You know you're better than other people out there making more money than you. You're just not communicating more effectively. You know you have good stuff inside of you. You need to get over yourself because you're doing those people a disservice. And so it's like the whole conversation changes. So I tell people if you don't think you're a good coach and then you want to come to me, I'm like, well, then I don't know if I want to help you. Like, and it's legit for me because I don't want to train people on how to speak and sell people if they're not ultimately good at what they do. And so for those people, I legit push them off. I'm like, I don't want to help you. So now, like, I think a lot of people that are coaches right now should not be coaches. They don't have enough experience. They're just not good enough. They're not taking it seriously enough. It's like their side hustle, like Amazon, e-com, whatever they're doing this thing. Like they're playing entrepreneur. And so like for the people that get to me, they're not playing speaker anymore. And so a lot of that's been established, and now as we're like in our funnel and our ascension ladder, as we're going more broad, I think, so we kind of generalize it into not speaking per se. The lead into our ladder, our ecosystem is communication. And so a theme, and even in my front end facing content, that this belief that we're installing is the quality of your life comes down to the quality of your communication, how you communicate with others, more importantly, how you communicate with yourself. And so if you're scared of going out there and really making the message, the impact that you were designed to make into the world, is because you're communicating some thought that's no longer serving you. And I don't know if it's fear, if it's doubt, if it's insecurity, but you need to ask yourself, how long has that thought, that feeling, that emotion been there? And what would your life be like without it? What would happen for you if you could feel the fear and do it anyway? Because your story is going to end someday. And you need to make a decision. What do you want your story to be? Do you want it to be the person that let fear control them, or the person that acted in spite of it? And I can't tell you what you should do, but I can tell you every person you've ever lived up to, every person you respect has taken the latter choice. And the reason that you're inspired is because part of you is that person. You need to make sure that you have an alignment with that fear. You understand the fear, but you can't let it control you. So with speaking, I'll ultimately, and this is one of the things that's different. And, we work with some of these bigger companies, and I say this a lot. It hasn't really taken off. So we're testing different like ad copy right now. But one of the things that I say that helped me a lot with my own sales career is I sold for Tony Robbins. He's an amazing speaker, and he indoctrinated an audience and really the world in a certain way of being. I'd say this all the time to entrepreneurs and coaches. If you have a sales team, do you know how you can help your sales team immediately improve their sales? Be a better speaker, communicate more trust, pre-handle objections with your story in your front-facing content, be it a webinar, a VSL, an event. And so when people come to a Tony thing, and here's an example of what that sounds like. So at a Tony event, say UPW day 2, he does this whole gap map thing, which is huge. And we always say no gap, no sale, but he trains people in how to make decisions. So one, most people don't want to make decisions. So he's training them to have a positive association to making decisions. Can you think of a time in your life where you had to make a decision? Maybe it was to go to a certain school, or, to get a job. And maybe the job wasn't the right one for you, or maybe you didn't really like the school, but had you not made that decision, you wouldn't have met your spouse. You wouldn't have had this next opportunity happen for you. What are the decisions in your life that may not have seemed like at the time, but have been a blessing for you? So we're creating a positive association into making decisions. And then we say the reason that most people don't succeed is because they're not decision makers. And I say it like this: if you go to any company, and a lot of you are here in sales, you go to a company, you want to talk to the what maker? The decision maker. Anybody in business who can't make a decision is useless. In fact, write that down. Anybody in business who can't make a decision is useless. So I have people write that down. So now I'm associating pain to not being able to make a decision. Anybody in business, not in life, but anybody in business who can't make a decision is useless. You would never call a company and say, hey, can I talk to the person that makes no decisions?
Yeah.
No, that would be a waste of time. How do you get to connect with more decision makers? Like attracts like. It means you need to be a decision maker. And most people don't succeed, not just in business, but in life, because they can't make decisions. All successful people are decision makers. So they just have, maybe for you, it's not a bad thing. You just might have some weak decision-making muscles. So let's make some now. Let's make a small decision and a big decision. Small decision, not going to eat this food for the next 30 days. A big decision. What could be like, cutting a person out of your life or changing a routine, or like, what's a bigger one? And make those decisions now. And then at the event, if people didn't sign up for Tony's Next Step, and I got them on the phone after the event, I called them because I knew they didn't sign up. I knew they wanted to. I brought up that moment. Hey, remember when Tony brought up that decision thing? Yeah. Remember when he asked you to make those decisions? What were the ones you wrote down? Do you have your book there? Yeah. What were they? Did you follow through? No, they never do. 100% of the time, they didn't follow through on what they said they were going to do. And I said, where else does that show up in your life? A big part of having respect for yourself is being honest with yourself. What do you think that's cost you in your life? How much longer is that going to be okay? What's going to happen if you don't change? Who else is that going to affect? So now we're into the pain. And then I'm going to get them to like see the gap. What if they did? And then all people need a plan, a process, and support along the way. This conversation is about giving you the support that you need. So like they're pretty locked in. These are the things that I would do over and over again. And then it's just from there, it's looping. And it's the same stuff that everybody says, does this seem like something that you think or feel can get you there? What makes you think that it can? And then you can inoculate from other people as well. Anytime you do something big in your life, there's going to be people in your life that always try to pull you down. These dream killers. Do you have any of those in your life? People that like, they kind of support you, but really it's this, how good is it going to be? How great is it going to feel when you get to show them that you did this? So the whole conversation is just inoculating against those objections.
Wow. Yeah, I see why you knock them all out in discovery anyway, because it really is like just a conversation. It's not this like super, it is strategic, but it flows. Once you internalize the tools, it comes out so naturally, right?
Yeah, after doing like 1,000 presentations, I started to interview people that I spoke at their company or I talked to them one-on-one. And I'd say, at what point in my presentation, in our conversation, did you know that you were going to sign up? And it was never at the end. They're like, man, when you looked at me, you asked me that question, or I saw how you interacted with that person. I was like, I trust this guy. I was like, or you told that story. And I started thinking like, shit, like, man, I relate to that. So it was like they had already kind of made the decision ahead of time. And with speaking, I do a lot of what's called seeding. So I could even say to you right now, I was just prepping for my 3-day event that I have coming up on the 19th through the 20th, and it's going to completely change people's lives. And so I think it's so important to prepare. So I could go talk, but I just seeded my presentation. Or I could even say, I was coaching somebody the other day on how they could do this, this, and this. So I don't need to tell you I'm a coach. It's already implicit. So I help people. I overcome challenges. I help high-level people. I do this. It's a lot of money. So all of that's implied. And because of the relationship and because I'm embodying a lot of the values that people want to have, the law of rapport is people like people who are like themselves or how they want to be. Of course, I'm showing up as the person they want to be, confident, successful, empathetic, kind, warm, challenging, owning myself. And that creates a bit of a gap and desire, and I can feel them lean in. And if not, I know how to get them on my side. And so there's already something there. And then from there, it's just creating the sales momentum, and it's just completion. That's what closing is. It's completing.
Yep. 100%. Oh my goodness. That was a masterclass. I know for you, it's just like normal conversation, but it is really a masterclass in persuading people from the very beginning. So that way you don't have to work as hard at the end. Because yes, the sale is definitely made in the beginning of the conversation, whether it's on stage or in a one-to-one capacity. So are you good on time? Do you have like 5 more minutes?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yay. Okay.
One more thing on that too, this whole like how you open the call too. And I know some people do this. This is like an extreme example of it. I wouldn't do this, but as soon as they hop on the call, a salesperson or a business owner wouldn't work for a salesperson as well as a business owner. Say, look, I only talk to no nonsense type of people that really want to do shit in their life. Are you that type of person? Yes or no? Great. So if it's yes, great. If not, we're done. So the whole, like they've locked themselves into a frame, a no nonsense type of person. I only talk to action takers. I only talk to people that are willing to do this. Is that you? If not, this will be a very short call. So if they stay on, they're locking in. So that would be a really extreme frame right from the start. Obviously, it wouldn't work cold calling. It wouldn't work unless you're the entrepreneur and there's a lot of trust and respect and somebody reached out to you. So a lot of this is contextual and what you can do. Like if you're the entrepreneur, like if Tony Robbins or Oprah Winfrey called you up and tried to sell you something, you'd be like, yes, like I can't believe Oprah's at my door. Like she's so famous. And so, but the no like and trust factor isn't there. And with me, whether I'm cold calling or doing a presentation, now when I speak on stages with all these famous people, a lot of people know me, which is great. But for 15 years speaking every day, I was a salesperson selling salespeople that knew that I was there to sell that didn't want to be sold. So I didn't have like a lukewarm, I had an angry audience. Like nobody liked me. Like they were there to heckle me. And I had less than an hour to get all of their money, 4 days of their life, hotel, like I had to get all of it right in one presentation. And so here's how I thought of it. And here's how I want everybody here to think of it, whether you're cold calling or people in your DMs or your whatever you're doing. I thought of it like I'm wanting to get people to change. And if change was measured like this, like on the y-axis, like this, like a lot of change or a little change, and then there's time. I heard Michael Jordan say this one time, changed my life. He said, I never lost a basketball game. I only ran out of time.
Mm.
And so for me, I believe, so a big part of selling people or enrolling people is the belief that you can. So I believe that I can sell anybody. Now, it might take me 20 years. I might have to call you every day, come to your house, be your best friend, but I know that it's possible if there's a need. If there's truly a need, if there's not a need, I don't want to sell you, but if there's a need and you really need this, no doubt I can sell 100% of people with a need. It might take me 20 years. And I might make a little bit of change over a long time. But I think in that time, in those 20 years, what would have had to have occurred? Is there a certain story or a vulnerable moment or a challenge? Like if this was your best friend that you've known for 20 years, you know, if you met somebody and after 2 weeks, you feel like you've known him forever, what occurred? Like what actually happened? And so I think if I could take all of those moments, these magic selling moments, and shove them into as short amount of time as possible to create the most amount of change, that's ultimately what we're doing with a sales call. Now, for some people, based on where they're at, you need to take more time. And an extreme example, because this is how we learn, like if a guy is trying to sleep with a girl or date a girl and they go on their first date and she mentions her last like date, she got raped or something, well, you probably aren't going to push her to like go home with you. You probably need some more time there. If somebody was just like lost their home and they lost everything, maybe you need a little more time, you know? And so as much as I wish there was like one magic sentence to say to every single person to get all the deals and, you know, have all the sex or have everybody do everything that you want, there's not, but you need to be able to get people into what I call a buying state, which is based on pattern of focus, you know, feeling like where they are. And you can see if somebody's tense, how relaxed they are, what they're focused on, the meaning, you know, it's about creating this energy, this energetic state. And so playing with some things. Yes, you need to have the scripts and the questions and the objection handlers all there, but all of those are tools to put somebody into a state. And I think the target of most people's communication is they're trying to say the thing, to say the thing. Their outcome is to say the thing, as opposed to say the thing to get to the place. And if you find that if you're clear in your outcome and your intention to get to this place of trust and vulnerability and honesty and what's real, most of the things that you say can even go away. And you can actually say a lot more by saying a lot less. Because it's the spaces between the notes.
Yes.
That creates the music. And there'll be that place where people like really drop in and feel that connection that's going to allow them to really open up at a deeper level.
Yeah. This is the stuff that is happening, like you say, in between the lines. And this is the stuff that sales reps, coaches, consultants, anyone who sells anything, they can't get to that level where they can connect with people that way. And then you can actually let go enough to leverage these tools in a way that feels natural and flows and conversational, right?
Yeah. There's a guy too, and you know, sometimes it depends on where they're at. There's a guy that's reached out a couple times now. And I mean, he's so successful. I mean, he's like a 9-figure guy. But he said he saw like a podcast of me and he was just like, he's like, you're my guy. And I said, man, you're doing pretty good. I was like, I don't know. I said, well, let me see some of your stuff. He was just like, nope, I saw you. You're my guy. And so I want to make sure with that relationship, I said, well, let me see something here. So I want to make sure I can actually help you. And it turns out like we can help him a lot. And he's literally the top of his field. But I was hesitant to even take him on. And I think because I wasn't hungry to like just get his money, and we're going to work with him, but it's going to be like a multi six-figure thing. And I told him, right, last time we talked, I said, look, here's what we did with like Jeremy Minor. Here's what we did with, Hermosi's company and all that. But I like, these are six-figure deals, like multi six-figure. And he was like, I saw it. He's like, here's what we get per client, this, that. He says, if we do like a fraction of this, it'll pay for itself. So he started selling himself on me. And, as I was pushing him away, but part of that's because of my position in the industry and my authority. And I listen to, I love like the whole like CIA, FBI negotiation stuff. And my buddy Chase Hughes, like every FBI, all the protocols are his. And I was listening to something he said one day recently. We were talking about all these skills, and we go back and forth on like some really advanced hypnosis, advanced, communication, implanting beliefs in people's minds, all of that. And authority is way more powerful than skills. So if you have like no skill set, like right now with the election, there's all these celebrities who are very powerful, like promoting, both sides. And that, more than what they're actually saying, is their position. And what I do with my position, even though I'm not famous or anything, but I've done a lot with that position. Part of it is I borrowed authority from Tony. That helped me a lot. He borrowed initially from Jim Rohn. So we're all doing that. Some salespeople are trying to borrow authority from the entrepreneur they sell for. But the challenge with some of the salespeople they sell for, the entrepreneurs they're selling for are not truly authorities, or they don't communicate like authorities. And that makes it harder for the salesperson. And so it's up to you as the salesperson to be your own authority. And I sold people into Tony's stuff back in the day that hated Tony.
Oh,
and
wow.
I did presentations. They said that they didn't know who Tony was. They were sold because of me. And they thought that I was going to be the one doing the coaching of the event. And I said, nope, somebody even better. They were like, oh, I thought you were going to be teaching the seminar. I was like, no, but I sold it as if it was me. And so as the salesperson, you can't be tied to this entrepreneur because they might say something dumb online. Right now, all the political stuff. There's some amazing entrepreneurs that I think are too, like they're too pro Kamala or too Trump. Like they're too polarizing. We're all on Team Human. I think, there's some people on both sides that are entrepreneurs right now that are saying some things that are polarizing parts of their audience that they're going to regret 5 years from now. We're all on Team Human. Like, nobody's evil, it's like, nobody's Hitler, nobody's like communist or fascist. It's like, they're all just humans being human, just regular people, with their beliefs and values based on where they grew up and all of that stuff. And so I think that, because of that, I can make it harder for the salesperson, but at the end of the day, as a salesperson, like it's up to you to connect with this human, and it's all you on that call. And I might not borrow the authority of the person I'm selling for. I might borrow the authority of, I was watching this crazy show the other day where this guy said this, and he was an expert in this. What do you think of that? So I might just change the subject because we're all going off on Pluto, and I do something, said that, entrepreneurs, have an ability to do this, this, and this. Do you believe that? So I might do something, just interrupt the pattern like that, or I'll borrow the authority from somebody that said a quote, like Warren Buffett said this. I sell speaking, so I'll often use, Warren Buffett said the most valuable thing he ever did was invest in a speaking course. It was by Dale Carnegie back in the day, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And he said, without that ability to effectively communicate, you wouldn't know his name. Wow. And while you and I might not be making billions, do you believe in what he said? Do you think that's true, that the way that we communicate affects how much we make? So that's a micro seed and a belief, because they're going to say yes to that. I borrowed the authority, I backed it up with a story, and it's true. Do you think that the way we communicate has something to do with our success? Yes. So whether I'm speaking at an event, so by the time I get people to my offer, there's certain beliefs, just like with Tony and Dean and all those guys, before they can sell people into becoming a coach, they need to sell them on the fact that they have value. Hey, you need to believe that you have experiences and knowledge that other people can benefit from. Mm-hmm. So they got really good at selling people that they have value, but some of the people that they told had value, they don't have enough value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the fact you
Absolutely.
read, you've been to 10 seminars and read 20 self-development books, but have done nothing with it. It's like you have a lot of knowledge, but I don't know if you hold the standard of coach, because to coach somebody, for me, I take it really seriously. And it's like when somebody gives you money, it's like they're saying, especially when they're in a tight spot financially, they're making a bet and they're basically saying, hey, I trust you with my future.
Yeah.
I trust what you're saying at face value enough that I'm going to take a bet based on what you said that has drastic implications in the quality of my life.
Mhm.
And if somebody has a bad experience, like I would do all these talks. I did sometimes 3 seminars a day for Tony, and I was speaking at a company. And sometimes I was positioned as coming in there as a motivational speaker. Tony Robbins is having a speaker come. And
Right.
it was people that were there just for a free talk. It was really hard to sell those people. They were really broke. So I could have done a bad talk. I could have hard sold them. I could have been a douchebag. I could have just been like, oh, fuck these people. They're not worth my time. But from then, anytime in their life they have the opportunity to see a speaker, they're going to say, oh, I've been to one of those things before. Not worth it.
Mm.
I would completely stop that person from that day from going. Maybe they don't buy that day. Maybe they go to something else. Maybe they need to see it for 20 years before they finally make a decision to bet on themselves, but they keep on going because it made them feel good, and people do things that make them feel good. So I got to challenge them enough to make them feel bad about their current situation, but implant in them the feelings that make them feel good about being there and feel hopeful for their future at the same time. That's what sales, that's what it means to be a
Yeah.
salesperson. It's a hurt them, heal them business. You got to put them in pain and then make them feel really good about doing something and about being somebody. So
Mhm.
that's the juice.
Absolutely. So juicy. My goodness. So much more sauce than I even anticipated for today. Really. Before I let you go, real quick, I want to do my rapid fire question segment. I'll just do 3 or 4 questions. And the idea is for you to respond with the first thing that comes to mind. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. So, first thing, if you were building a coaching business from the ground up, what are the most critical qualities that you're looking for in a sales team?
If I was building a coaching company or business or product or
Coaching business, so they require a sales team to sell it. So, what would be the qualities you look for in that team?
hunger and organization. So many things get lost. So people being really organized, and I'm super disorganized. So I need super organized people around me. But then it's just hunger. People that are showing up and professional every day, just really want it and want to grow. So yeah, we've been really blessed with the people that we've worked with. So yeah, hunger. Hunger is the biggest thing. Desire to
Okay.
learn. And yeah, it's just being a fan of what we do. And I think there's people we've worked with are fans of mine, me and Eli, my business partner, raving fans. And I think that helped me sell Tony. And a lot of people are selling offers that they've never been through. They don't really care about. They're on multiple offers. I don't think it's a bad thing, because somebody can just be a badass like closer and they want the reps. But for me, I would love for people, people say, like, we get clients all the time from people that used to be in our program or that used to be sold, and they're still such fans of us. They're like, oh, somebody was just at a Hermosi event a couple weeks ago, and Hermosi said to this one guy, you need to get on stage more. And somebody was there. He's like, hey, you should check out this guy, Eli. And that guy reached out to me. He says, yeah, it was the Hermosi event. People were talking about you, signed up. And so we have like everybody in our ecosystem as a salesperson that's for us, but it's all based on the fact that they're raving fans. And I think that your salespeople definitely need to be raving fans.
100%. I agree. In your time working with Tony Robbins, what's the biggest life lesson that you learned from him?
I remember I was living with his son, Jarek, and Tony communicates with these voice notes. Like Tony will still send me these voice notes. He just, they're awesome. But these were voice notes before there was actual like voice notes on your phone. It would be like an audio message, and you'd see it would be like in a file encrypted, and be like, I've never seen that before. Now they're super common, but it's in these voice notes. And I remember his son wanted to take over the stage and be a speaker and all of that. And Tony said this thing to him, changed my life. Because Jarek would let me listen to the voice notes from his dad, which was like amazing. Because I was like, what would it be like if Tony was my dad? Like, how cool is that? This epic dude. And he said this to his son, who wanted to be a speaker on a stage. He said, you can get smart from another person's knowledge, but you will never become wise from another person's wisdom.
Wow.
And I think a lot of people, even now, are gaining a lot of knowledge, but wisdom comes from experience. You can become smart from another person's knowledge, but you'll never become wise from another person's wisdom, which means that like there's no greater teacher than experience. And that's why I say how a lot of people are overcoached. It's 1 part learning, 10 to 15 parts action, experience, and then go back and revise, maybe learn the same lesson again, go back over the same coaching call. Oh, I only applied like 20% of that one call. And if you're going, listening to like 100 hours of content, like that's just a lot, I'm just like, how are you going to execute on all that? Now, some people can. Alex Hormozy, his ability to execute in many different things, phenomenal. Taylor Welch, phenomenal. They've done a lot in a little bit of time, marketing, sales, business, but they also cut out everything for a long period of time and just went in on that. So, I mean, you can do it. I went really deep into one aspect, but I think it's just the wisdom.
Amazing. Okay, last one. What's next for you? Are there any new projects that you're working on?
In this month, I've got a few big stages that I'm speaking on, and I speak at a lot of these big events where I come on as a last speaker and I do a repitch, and I'll pull like an additional $1 million out of an audience that was already pitched. So that's our thing. Now we're just all in on teaching other people how to do events and speak and all of it. We're going to take over the speaking part of this industry, and there's only a few other people out there doing it. And I've gone through their stuff, and I'm just like, man, we could dominate on this. So really the focus right now for us is marketing. Yeah, I've been really blessed. My first year, within a few months, I did 7 figures off word of mouth, and we've always done really well. But now I'm like, why not go really big? So and marketing right now is interesting. Nobody's got it perfected. We brought on the right people. So I don't want to say figuring it out. We figured it out, but we're optimizing it. And so just being more prevalent in the market. And we've got some cool, unique strategies that they're going to be different than what anybody else is doing. So that's the cool thing.
Beautiful. I love different. I love new. Everyone can appreciate different and new. So I'm excited to see that stuff when it's out in the world. And last but not least, I appreciate you so much for coming on here today. This was an absolute masterclass. I know the audience got a crap ton of nuggets. So guys, drop your nuggets in the comments, share what you've learned, because my eyes are definitely opened, and it's really cool seeing your perspective, how you go about implementing these tools in a way that's so natural and so you. So I learned a lot today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for doing this. By the way, I love how you show up. I've been seeing you everywhere. I love Bill's work. I see you guys are doing really, really great things. So kudos to you. Inspired to talk to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, party people, you know the drill. Like this episode if you got some value. Don't forget to comment your nuggets. And as always, don't forget to hold yourself to a higher degree so you can be the most effective leader you can be. Until next time, goodbye.